I became very excited about assessments about 2 decades ago when I trained to become a teacher. One of the lecturers had attended a training session, I'm sure, on formative assessments and had returned very passionate, very excited about Black and Williams's publication, Inside the Black Box. I listened to that publication and I left with a very distinct awareness of the importance of assessments for learning. I became an enthusiast straight up. I have focused in this area my entire career, and I have come to some interesting discoveries and conclusions that I want to share with you. Obviously, the terminology has changed. So when I was training, the emphasis was on formative and summative assessments, whether it was done before the evaluations where judgments were made, or it was done at evaluations and judgments made formative or summative. Obviously, they all provide data about learning, and as time went on, the scholarship began to dwell not on the time of collection or even the purpose of collection, but of data and its use in informing learning. So people began to distinguish data-informed learning. People looked at the assessments themselves as tools of learning. So you would see in the literature assessments, so learning-oriented assessments as learning. So part of the actual learning process, you can integrate assessments, and that excited me for a while. Formative assessments were things that I did usually at the beginning and middle of my lessons, and sometimes at the end of the lessons. But those assessments were done so that, especially the ones at the beginning, it wasn't done because I wanted to just evaluate what I had taught. But there were new things that the students would discover as they did those assessments that made assessments learning events in their own. Very exciting. And that brought some breakthroughs. But again, pursuing this and establishing these in the classrooms, I began to look at the literature a little bit more, and I had moved into the motivation for learning. Students are passive, depending on where you teach. Some students more passive than others, especially towards responding to feedback. I've been on a very exciting journey in my career. I started my career with mini whiteboards where students wrote on and showed and so on. But there are many, many weeks, especially in the secondary school feedback cycle. Every couple of weeks, the teacher takes the exercise books in. You spend hours reading and marking and feeding back in red, in pink, depending on your school. And we've done this in various colors, and it's linked in with various perspectives. I'm not even going to dwell on that one. But often, to distinguish between teacher and student feedback, my school at the time favored green pens. So you would make your feedback, and we would encourage students to read them and to respond in green. Cursory responses. Many students did not even want to do that. It became another punitive thing for students to read, and if they hadn't done it, you had to monitor it and so on. Obviously, the internal interest in responding to feedback was minimal, and that's something I knew was critical, so I explored this further.